every time this happens, we always have a great show. I don't know. It's so weird. It's so weird that happened. I thought it was the app, and then it seemed like maybe it was the internet. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so it's coming.
Okay, good.
So we won't be able to see all the comments, but I love that music.
Oh, my son just started playing his banjo when I got on here.
Oh, he's got a banjo.
Yeah, that's Julio.
Julio. All right. Julio. A little Latin flavor to that.
Yeah.
Well, what is Julio? I should know. I'm Spanish.
Julio.
John? No, or Julius?
No, maybe? It's after Julius Caesar. He added his own name actually just recently.
He named himself Julio.
No, well, I got his name when he was in the womb. He came to me. He's like, "It's Julio, Mom," and so that's what I tell him now when he asks me. But he added a name just in the last few months.
He did.
He added Quetzal.
Quetzal. Quetzal.
Yeah, Julio Quetzal.
Are you Hispanic?
No, I married into a Latino family. Yeah.
Ah, Murphy. I would have never known.
I know. Yeah.
I guess we're all mutts. Quetzal, though. What does Quetzal mean? I didn't know that was
it's a bird. It's a bird.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I know I've seen that name a lot. I guess because it's Spanish.
Yeah.
So I did 2 shows and then I was down on the couch. Oh, here we go again. What's going on? A bit of interference here. Yeah, I just went down on the couch. Somebody just said it's a feathered serpent, Quetzal. Yeah, Quetzal.
Oh, Quetzalcoatl. Yeah, it's related to
Quetzalcoatl. Okay. I should know this stuff. It's the bird of Guatemala, by the way. That's what Heather Nilsson says.
Yeah.
I don't even know, because I think you were in this group of like 200 plus messages that I had to work through a 9-hour period, and then there was a few hangers on, but I don't remember. I have seen you out in the field for a long time, and so I know you've been out there and you've supported us, which we really appreciate. Everybody. Otherwise, we couldn't do this, which is just a miraculous thing in itself. She just popped out. You're good, but your mic's off.
Okay.
Okay.
That was weird.
What is happening here?
I don't know.
Are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh yeah. I thought that the retrograde was over yesterday. How strange.
I don't know. I was just on the couch too, just doing one of those meditation siestas and was feeling loads of energy, but that's the norm, right? Isn't that all the time now?
I guess so. And then there seems to be some kind of synchronicity with people converging. I mean, I've always had people say, "Hey, you were in my dream last night," or, but God, now it's like, it used to, it got to like where it was a couple a day, and now it's like 3 or 4 a day. One way or the other, you can see we're connecting in the ethers or in dream state or whatever. But if you went down for an hour and I went down for an hour, that's when I sent you the note that I had to reboot. I wasn't talking about my computer. I looked at it, it was 5 minutes to go. I'm like, oh no, I need 5 more minutes. Get some coffee and then get my juice. But yeah, it's a pleasure to meet you. And yeah, it's yeah. What did you just say? Yeah, like that's the norm now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's
so active, so active.
It really is, and it's interesting and a bit painful. I mean, I really can't complain on my end. I mean, I've been going through pretty easy. I had one morning that was a little bit shaky, but I caught myself real quick a few days ago because I started my day picking up the phone, which I just stopped doing. That's just so important to like have that hour of just, just getting your thoughts together and let everything fall into place.
Yeah.
But yeah, this whole thing about what you're talking about, all those things that are becoming, they're no longer like, oh, we're getting a download, or, oh, this is happening. It's like, it's becoming normal, and it's really equalizing the playing field. It's like we can talk about things and it is constructive, and we can argue about, do we need to talk, and all this stuff, but it's like everybody can relate to what you're talking about. This whole.
It's such an honor to be here with you, Todd, because I have been following you, and I love what you're doing, because this coming together to be with another or be with a few and allowing what's alive to rise up, that synchronicity is so juicy. So what just rose up for me listening to you is this, that it just feels like there's so much in the field seeking to be materialized.
Yeah.
Like the consciousness is looking for those portals.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Body, within the mind, within the heart. And you're right, it cracks us wide open. Like it has that potential to be like this volcano.
No, that's God, that's perfect. This is why I do this show. I mean, what do you call that? Like I was trying to get to that with Corey on the previous show. Like we were talking, and then you literally are getting, I guess, that energy that you're talking about, that multidimensional, whatever it is, that huge availability that's here. It just creates really, because there's so much pressure, or not pressure, but so much emphasis now on the present, it just creates a free flow, kind of an inspirational vibe where you, not in a bad way necessarily, although, because I can trigger people, but where you just trigger each other into real-time intel, I guess would be one way to put it. Disguised
like sparks.
There you go. In the simplistic form of two people just having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like, who would have thought the best code was going to come from two people, just, or more people just sitting around talking? But yeah, that comes to mind. And I really like what you said. That's a really big takeaway now for me, because so you can imagine, I feel like the 10th, 11th, and 12th, there was definitely an ending and a new beginning. That's not to say that, things get severed forever or things are connected forever. It's not like that. It's just that what you said, it's like we've been out there searching for this, all of this, so many people in the ethers and have all their gifts, but like, I can just picture what you said, like this, that energy has been anchored, and it's putting good pressure on us to come through the portals that we are. And I love what you said about cracking open the heart, because that's where the pressure is. It's like demanding. It can only be really utilized if the heart gets totally cracked open. And we've all had those points where we have to admit something to ourselves. And then the gold of sharing that transparency with somebody else. That's as close as I can get. Your description was just spot on. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Sweet. Yeah. It's the materialization of love.
Yeah. It is, though. It's like the
real love.
Yeah. Yeah. And we all have it.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that's happening is we're being pushed that direction, even if we thought we had it, because where we didn't have it, as hard as that is to admit, that's, of course, I guess the ego holding on, but really to really be responsible with our thoughts, and then everything that goes from there, it's demanding it of us. We're demanding of it of ourselves, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what you said about pausing to reboot yourself, because I think that's like the daily practice, right? Times, because that expression of love is it's like unfurling. And so like what it was yesterday, it's going to be different today. Tomorrow. I'm like, okay, let me reboot here. Let me get stabilized right here. And yeah, and that cracking open, as crunchy and painful as it can be, is like, you know, it's like moving through those fears, whatever it is. Like, I think that's where we first connected recently last spring, because I was going through a big opening, and I was so scared of losing, you know, people I loved. I think a lot of us have been feeling this in the collective, so much potential loss, so much loss that has happened. But moving through it, it's like, oh no, it's just, there is no loss. It was just a grander expression of love. In fact, even cleaner and clearer than ever before, like where beyond where I've ever loved.
Yeah.
In that new expression.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, you know, we fight those things. Like we fight those things, which obviously the things that we fight the most are closest to us, right? I mean, this is something we've all experienced when it's had kids, when they start to go the other way on you, and even our own relationship with our parents. You know, you ask people, what are your traumas? And it's my mother, my father, you know, so much of the time. But you're right. You never lose it. You actually get it back in times, you know, 100-fold. I mean, it's still, it's bigger and better than it ever was if we get out of the way and let it be. Yeah. So you were going through something big last year, and we connected then, or was it?
Yeah, you know, I joined you and Morgan and a handful of others in the spring on just like a pop-up group. Like,
oh yes, okay, now I remember. Yes.
And yeah, I was going through it with my oldest son because he was making a choice that I really thought was, I was scared I was going to lose him because of the choice he was making.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, but I remember the energy of it. Yeah. And that's another thing too, like those open mics, that was the frequency or the energy of that, the open mic is, and this is like that really, but where people come on in that spur of the moment, it reminds me of you know, I'm from the South, and I was about 12 years old, went to my first Baptist revival in a football stadium, and they get to a point in the show where they go, you want to come down and what is it, get saved or whatever they call it, and like people start going down, and you know, they get prayed on, and they give their life to Jesus or whatever. It reminds me of that. It's because not that part of it, but the fact that the person getting out of the chair and going to look for a higher alignment, but through like you said, through the fears. Like you walk through the fear, almost like walking through the fear.
There's that stepping into vulnerability.
Yeah.
Automatically is going to be transmuting so much in your field. This stepping into this with you, I'm feeling it now.
Yeah.
Being able to say yes to this invite.
It's true. Like I got this, and I keep repeating it, but now I think I might have to add another word, but it's like, you know, we become aware, and through that awareness, we know we've got to be more authentic. It's that good pressure of that energy you're talking about, pushing on the heart. And then you find yourself in a vulnerable situation because the authenticity creates this space where more stuff comes in, and now you're vulnerable, and you've got that fear that you talk about that you got to walk through. It's inevitable. And then it becomes like transparency, and like transparency is, I've been thinking about this a lot. It comes with telepathy. There is no choice here. The telepathy's, in other words, if we can read everybody's mind, then everything's transparent, which is scary, but also liberating. It'd be different if it's only I'm going to be everyone's only going to know about me. That's scary. But if everyone's going to know everything about everybody, then that pretty much, to me, that's like the solar flash, right? That everybody talks about. That would be the solar flash. Because what would happen? We would have nothing to hide, right?
Right. Wide open hearts.
Yeah. Cracked open hearts.
Cracked open hearts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine the flow of compassion.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. Because
Right?
somebody always, I remember when I hit the streets, when I woke up for those 2 years, and one of the things I would hear a lot too would be, don't get on the pity pot. Somebody's got it worse than you. When you're homeless, you see people that have it worse than you. Like, I mean, they can't even like clean themselves, or, I mean, so you're like, wow, I have nothing to complain about. That humility that comes from getting your heart cracked open, right? Repeatedly,
Yeah.
even when you think you're done.
There's always another layer.
Mm. It feels good now, though. Do you think that we've made some progress? I feel like we've really made some progress recently. Like,
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I feel like we're hungry for this. And so there's like this leaning in for it, even though it's almost like it's a pulling us through the fears because we're so hungry for it. Like, because it is our norm that's calling us home, the norm of our essence,
Hmm.
the connection with others. That's the norm that's really calling to us. As much as we hear people talk about the past norm, it's like this is the true essence of us that's being called in to play this game.
Are you having like, I don't know how your family unit goes and all. I mean, so most of the people that come on here, it's funny because even this beautiful lady that came on this morning, Linda Jarrett, who's been channeling angels for 11 years and healing people for 20, British, just like Linda, the Good Witch of the North, that kind of energy.
I love that.
Yeah. And and I said, so do people, has it been difficult to assimilate, with humans, basically? And she just started laughing and talked about how she just kind of puts on a different hat, plays with her grandchildren. There was just something about that. Like there is that assimilation happening, but a lot of people that come on here, it's almost like two different hats they wear. Are you surrounded by people that are like-minded? I've run into a few families that everybody's woke in the house, which is wild. That's wild.
Yeah, kind of. I kind of am like my family of origin. I definitely chose a really warm, loving, connected, low trauma family to drop into. I feel like I kind of needed that nest.
Mm-hmm.
Like I came in with some very kind of like this angel child who had memory of my multidimensionality awareness and perception of things. So that easy transition into a very loving, warm connection. My family is very spiritual. Very much through the tradition, the Christian tradition. And so my parents and my brother and like a lot of pastors and teachers in my family, and most of them are still on that path through that tradition. And I've been the one who's kind of broken beyond that. So in a way I am different than, but also there was always so much acceptance and curiosity about my path with my family, and it still is. We still go and drop deep into conversation, and it's very easy to stay, connected with my family.
Well, that's cool.
Explore my own path.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So you said that you came into the world with an awareness of your multidimensionality. Was that like literal, or just more of like a feeling?
I just had memory. I had memories of being a small child and being able to just a sensory awareness. There was so much more than meets the eye. I remember walking into a room and feeling the energy and knowing that there had been a conflict in that room, or joyous expression in that room, or something like that. I could read the energy between people, but I didn't have any language for it. It was my norm, and so and nobody in my family had that awareness either. And so no one spoke to me about it. So in time, I did drop it. I did drop that awareness because I felt the pull of the people in my family to the 5 sensory awareness, stepping out. I was a very observant, quiet child. I love just to go and take it all in, but I had all the adults in my life, pulling me into being more engaged, being more assertive, and all those human things that, they wanted to see from me, to know that I was, which is all very valuable, right? Like that, I needed that obviously to embody, to really embody, but I don't feel like I felt like on an internal level, on subconscious level, I had to make a choice between the two ways of engagement. And so I let that multisensory awareness drop for a time. But it's fun because I was remembering recently that that it was my dad and my brother and I my dad actually, I think, activated my light language with me when I was a kid.
Are you serious? It came out as a kid. It came out as a kid.
Well, I didn't know it at the like only in retrospect, looking back, I'm like, oh man, we used to do these crazy things where my dad and my brother and I, when I was in grade school, we would go out in public, like to the mall or to the park or movie theater, and we would just riff to each other in another language. And we would just go back and forth, and it was very fun. And now looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was light language, because when I look back, it's just exactly how I feel in my light language now. It was very joyful. It felt like we were in this beautiful bubble of light. And so that's just curious to me. They don't call it that. They don't necessarily.
Do they still do it?
No, we don't.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So you that would be amazing.
You were born into a family of ETs, obviously.
Oh yeah, they're all star seeds. They don't actually acknowledge. They don't really. Oh, they're not awake to that, really.
Do they have any idea that you're aware of it? Do you ever talk about it? They do? I mean, yeah, they actually talk about it. I'm not like talking about like reading your posts.
Yeah. I went through an Akashic training. I went through loads of energy healing trainings, Akashic training. I did Akashic readings for some of my family members. So they sort of have an awareness, and I share bits and pieces with them when they ask. And, now it's like, if they ask me things, I'll share my perception of things. And so I just weave it into our family chats and discussions, but they're not falling all over themselves to explore. But, they definitely like have their, okay, that's good. I'm good now. Oh,
that's enough. Too much information. Enough. But, I've heard people come on the show and talk about something very similar. It sounds like your journey started out in, the whole awareness and then shutting it down and then it coming back. It's very similar to a lot of people that come on here. It doesn't sound.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had the traumas that so many people had that, came in such a fierce way to wake us up. Maybe you were asleep as many of us, but I've heard a lot of people talk about how it's kind of woven into their immediate family and they don't buy into it all, but as time goes on, they're asking more and more questions, which I think is kind of funny.
Yeah, it is curious, and it's fun to share. It's fun to share with my family when they are asking questions. My dad especially loves to chat with me and get deep into because he's a theologian, and
wow,
asking these deep questions. And
wow, he must really be.
That's what we do at Christmas and Thanksgiving. We just go into these deep dive discussions on the nature of life and.
What is God?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I did, in retrospect, because, I'm looking back on my life, I can see how I played this game to dip into certain other aspects, because I didn't have a lot of family trauma or lineage trauma. I ended up marrying into a family that had a lot of trauma. So I ended up traveling and spending time in Central America, and I lived in El Salvador at the war, and I married into a family there that had been carrying, generations of poverty and violence and, the trauma of the land there and all of that. And so I did go through experiencing, I don't know if you've heard of the concept of a milk line. There's the patriarchal line, the matriarchal line, and then sometimes there's a milk line.
What is that?
It's like your chosen family. It's like a lineage that you step into
Okay.
to
Okay.
experience or
Okay.
from or grow with or whatever. So this is a lineage I stepped into. And back then I was also kind of still caught in this old paradigm of, where the energies of, victimization were so strong. And so it was very easy. I got pulled in to be sort of, oh, I could help there. I could transmute that. Oh, I could, that star seed. Yeah, I got this. Kind of jumped into it in that way. And a lot of my work in the world in the past was some of that work of just like trying to be a rescuer to victimize populations and areas. And
were you consciously coming at it from a conscious star seed kind of mentality, or did that come later?
Not then. No. And in fact, the undoing of that marriage is where my dark night of the soul is really catalyst for my waking up to that aspect of myself again.
So you did have some trauma. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long ago was that? Was that around 2012?
Yeah, well, it was in 2010. And so by 2012, I was really just healed from, had gone through some healing of that. And in December 2012 was my first out-of-body experience. And then for like, I don't know, every few months after that, for the next 5 years, I had another major energy wave coming in, Kundalini activations, all of that stuff. And at first I was like, what the hell's going on? I was trying to figure it out. And after a time, I was like, just let it go, surrender. Whatever's happening is supposed to happen.
So that first one that you had, were you asleep or were you conscious?
I guess it wasn't exactly the first. The first one was really happening as I was going through it was really the volcano eruption of that dark night of the soul. And it was by myself in the just in the woods on a walk. And I had that experience of seeing the world in its ultra electric, vibrant state where everything is heightened and my awareness was heightened. And I had this download about the concept of love, and all kinds of things just really clicked for me. And so that was the first time that had ever happened to me. And that really empowered me to keep moving through that really challenging time. It was really that, we had 2 kids, there was a lot. And then in the 2012 experience, though, it was a group and it was a very held container. And it was a journey. It was like my first time going into a journey, like a shamanic journey. And I just went completely out to the cosmos to, like, I was slip sliding on a giant cosmic Merkaba.
Wow.
And coming back into the body was, I had all the shakes and the tears, and I was just like, oh my gosh, what just happened kind of experience. And that
that's trippy.
Really trippy.
That's trippy.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a couple of them, and one of them, I had a seizure where they used to have a history of seizures, and I just wonder, like, because I guess I was conscious, but when you have a seizure, you go out, so you're knocked out. But I was conscious in my light body. So when this happened to you, because I remember when that happened, and I went back into the body. Actually, when I left and came back in, I could feel that happen. I could feel like the density, almost like a coldness of the body, and then I'm out and I'm like really light, and you do your thing, come back, and coming back in, I remember just that distinctly. Oh my God, like that cold, dense, heaviness. Did you feel something like that when that occurred?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Exactly. Yeah, and the facilitator just came over and held me because I was just like, oh,
wow,
coming undone physically.
Was that with ayahuasca or just a straight?
No.
Wow.
Straight up. I've never done any plant medicine. Really, I've smoked a couple of joints when I was just socially later in life. But they really didn't do that much for me. It was really, it was like, I already know the natural high. There's nothing really that's been able to compare with my.
Yeah, I think there's those like you, they don't need anything. They really don't. I've met a few people like that. They just don't need anything because they're already there, basically.
It's pretty easy for me to drop in when I go into sessions with people. I'm just a pretty easy drop in.
Do you work with people? Are you a practitioner?
Yeah, I have. It's been interesting since the last year and a half. My work has shifted so much, so I've been doing a less one-on-one session work, but I have done. Probably the primary modality that I train in that's most well known is EFT, and there's that called matrix re-imprinting. It's kind of like regression work. It's like inner child work. So, but now, what I'm feeling so much now is just that there's so much capacity for people's self-healing to come on. And that's really what, healers have been doing all along, is holding the container for self-healing to happen. But for people to actually, activate their own processes to do it within their own container, I think I'd like to move into holding group containers or supporting group containers where this is happening within a group. I think that would be.
That's interesting.
During this time.
What do you see that as, like 7 or 8 people?
Mm-hmm.
Is it kind of like that shamanic thing where you flew out of your body, something like that?
I think I think it would be interesting to gather with people who are ready for something like that and see what emerges. I would just love to explore together.
That's interesting. That's interesting. It reminds me
there's so much potential.
Yeah. Yeah, because like the Bible says, where 2 or more gather, right? Which is actually even something like this. And then with the vortex that's created by all the people watching in the timeless, live or on the replay. But it reminds me of my friend Greg. God, I can't remember his last name. He's from Japan, and he runs J SETI, which is Japan. It's like the ESETI ranch. So it's about ET communication. So he, we did a few shows together. I met him up in Portland, actually. I met him at, I think Morgan and I met him at the airport one morning. We were passing through. But so what he does is they get together, several people, and they do a group appeal to communication. And I've seen pictures, and they'll have like white ribbons of light running through them and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty wild. But and of course, there's different representations of what you're talking about. It's really the same thing. So I can imagine getting a small group together in this atmosphere that we have now, and just everybody kind of getting to the same focal point or frequency and seeing what happens. That would be pretty wild. That would be, and that's probably something that's happening more and more, really.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to be going into these places of the potentials are there. We just need to open up circles and step in and actually, again, materialize what's possible.
Yeah, exactly. Teleportation.
Yeah.
I'm big on that. I just got a message from a friend of mine in Australia, and because I do consciously attempt, and I realize that there's I guess, for lack of a better word, a disconnect between what I'm conscious of and what actually happens. Sometimes there's flashes of it, but so she says, "Hey, you popped in last night, and you made it to Australia, and you had a bite to eat, and you had a nap, and then you went on your road." She went on the road, and she said, "It was so real, Todd." And I'm like, "Yes, thank you for the validation." Like, I know this is going down.
Yeah.
It only makes sense. It only makes sense.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it as, if we think about it from the quantum perspective of the whole of us as being, 99.99 whatever waves of energy, right? And then there's this tiny percentage of us, which is the particles, which can coalesce together into the human form. And so if this is the particles of me, and yet there's so much more, and then just visualizing what that would, practicing tuning into that so much more wholeness, not just like going within myself to access my higher self or going out there to access things, but just like, okay, there's this wholeness of me and it's all around and within. And then this piece is just the realization, the materialization, the spark. Yeah. So imagine, like, if we're engaging life from that whole perception of ourselves, there's really no limitation to what can be
true.
Realized.
True.
If we're again in that alignment, if we're engaging, the passion and that spark, and imagine as a group doing that. Yeah. Obviously, we're already doing it on in the realms, right? But
and then you're doing
it to materialize more.
Yeah, and then you're doing it with near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences, which to me are pretty much the same thing, or can be. I mean, they're definitely related. That's, I guess, say in most cases more of an unconscious occurrence, but to be conscious of it. And I'm finding that in my own efforts to generate it from the heart, I find that I haven't figured it out, the exact sequence or, but I can find this spot in my heart, like the core of my heart, or my heart and soul or something. And I guess it's not an easy description, but I guess that's where I launch from, right? Mm-hmm. Like I just take my purest place I can get to, and then I launch from there. And again, like I said, I'm not really conscious that it's successful or not, but I've had several validations, like to include my friend from last night. Yeah.
So when you go into your dream state or sleep state, are you setting intent to teleportate? What is your pre-ramp up process?
Well, I do it. Okay, so I've done it where I'm conscious before I go to sleep. And then to your point, I did it last night. I was like, okay, because it's almost like, okay, if I can program my DNA and reprogram it, then I can program my light body. Like, it's kind of weird though, because it's like praying when you're praying to yourself, which we really are.
Yeah.
Which is, you know what I mean? So it's kind of a different feel. And of course, the human part might fight it, I guess, is what I've found. Like, oh, you can't do that. Or do you really believe this? And you have all these, like, no. But I'm finding now that I'm speaking to my body, knowing that it's not just this body. Like it's, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at now with it. But yeah, to your point, I have done that, and I did it last night, which was, okay, I'm falling asleep now. This is what I'd like to do. This is the aspects of me that I'd like to maybe converse with, and I'd like to remember my lucid dreams. And it's working more and more every day. And some of it I don't think has to do with me consciously programming. I think a lot of people are getting a huge increase in what they're receiving.
Yeah.
What their experiences are. How about you? Is it anything increasing for you lately? This year, these last few weeks?
Yeah. I've been, it's interesting because I've been in control of my environment so much. I've worked so hard to create freedom in my personal environment. So I work remote, or I work on my own schedule, work for myself. And I was, eager to travel. And so we did that with my son, and I did that last year. And I'm just coming back home to our home base this summer and rooting in, just been noticing, presencing what's needed next. And I did something that I'm just like so curious at myself for having done it, because it's been contrary to everything I've been working towards, but I went and I got a regular job. I went and I started looking around. I'm like, you know what? I want to root into my local community and actually in my neighborhood. So
Wow.
I got a little job at this natural health food store a few blocks from my house. And I go and I feel like I'm an angel undercover, I
Wow.
go and it was actually my son who inspired me, because he's 16, and earlier this summer he was like, Mom, I kind of want to get a job because I want to brush my positivity off onto the other people, typical starseed kid. He's like, I'm here to make an impact somehow, so I got to get out there. I'm like, that's a pretty good motivation,
Yeah.
for getting a job. So it's interesting. I'm just like going into this job, which is not that different from the first job I had when I was 16. It's very contrary to the matrix, where you're supposed to, I had to move through lots of layers of entitlement actually to get myself to be like, okay, cool. I'm going to go check groceries and chat with people and connect and listen to their stories. And so I've been, and it's been such a sweet blessing to my life. Actually, I just am feeling a lot more joy. Joy is, I recognize that joy is one of my medicines that I'm supposed to be activating right now, or not supposed to be, but like, it's one of the things that supports me when I can activate it. And it's not something I would have imagined that I'd find going and doing this thing, but I am.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Makes total sense, really. I mean, because your mind or your programming or society or conventional wisdom would tell you, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But you're doing exactly what you said, which is really cool. I mean, and then I'm thinking about one of the brothers that's come on the show a couple of times, and the first time we met, and he's typical, like typical in the background. And I've been watching Soulogy for a while, and I didn't know everybody was crazy like me, and it's been a lot, one of these stories which were so cool to get people message every day about, wow, you kept my sanity. But he was saying, two things. He was saying, look, I think all the woo-woo's kind of gone now, and it's on us. So we're having to learn to be human, and we don't know what human is.
Yeah.
But the other thing he said that I thought was really interesting, he said, because obviously these are all empath types of personalities, right? Who we all didn't get affected by the quarantines because we've already been quarantined, self-quarantined, right? But
Yeah.
he said, I really feel like that we're supposed to go out and mix with the world now. I went, wow, that really does, because that makes a lot of sense. And I'm not saying that that's the gospel truth, but I'm just saying that it makes a lot of sense. Why would the light be hidden when it can go out and heal, so to speak? Like you're basically talking about an angel in disguise, undercover.
Yeah. Let's ripple out.
That'd be a good name for a 5D television series.
Yeah,
wouldn't it? Almost like a reality TV.
There you go. That can be the next level of Soulogy.
Yeah. Two, like, because there's an organic grocery store that I go to 5 miles down the road. That's about the only place I go. And I went a few times, and then 2 or 3 times back I went because I wasn't digging the organics from Walmart. There's a small town, so you don't really have any choices. So I thought, well, I'll pop down there. And I don't know, I spent, I got great produce. Number one, it's very small too. Like they only give you a little basket to carry, and I fill 2 up. And in the process, though, I got to know the people real quick. And it's a family business. And the guy that started it was there. And I don't know, there was just this exchange that went on between us. And I feel like in 5 or 6 minutes of talking to him, I got this massive education. like
Yeah.
not so much like in human terms, but it was like I was sitting with a master or something. Like I walked
Mm,
away just almost like in shock. And I was like, wow. So I can imagine being in a natural grocery store, you would have some pretty interesting energies coming through there.
yeah. And oh my gosh, people are so beautiful. You know? And you can forget that sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
I mean, you love the people you love in your family and in your circles, and you avoid the people that are crunchy for you, probably. But when you go and you're just there to engage, and there's nothing but this present moment with these people, with this person in front of you. It's
Yeah.
simple. It's just so simple to be there.
Yes, it really is.
And a lot can happen. You're right. You're right.
When you have kids, that's not so hard to get to, I remember coming home years ago when I was in the corporate world and traveling all the time and coming in and they're tugging on your legs, because I usually had 3, 4, 5 of them there.
Mm,
And I remember one day my wife at the time, because I'd be like, hey, good to see you. Get out of my way. I need to go chill. I'm like exhausted. And then she walked in one day and she's like, what goes, what did she say? She said, something like, what goes on in your life is very important, but what goes on their life is very important. And whatever she said, I realized
mm,
what a big role I played in a much bigger sense than I really had thought about. And that is their universe, right? So it's kind of the same thing you're talking about,
yeah.
meeting new people. And I think that's part of the beauty is the differences, that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you bring up that topic of parenting, and that's been a huge part of my work. Actually, most of my clients have been moms and parents. I'm working with families, and um, getting to that presencing with their kids, which is really getting to presencing with ourselves and our inner kids is what
Yeah.
gets to being able to be present with our kids, right? So that's deep work, and I'm curious, Todd, how that has been for you, like that role of father. As recently I heard this new perception of fatherhood as being, like the matrix way of raising kids is not that, is still very strong today, right? Like that old paradigm way of raising kids, and the way of fathering in that old paradigm was a heavy load for men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really
Yes,
imprinting.
you're right. And I was deep in it. I was very corporatized, very successful by the matrix standards. You sell your soul and you measure yourself by how well you compete with everybody. But yeah, it was very frustrating. I can remember telling my first and second wife, sometimes I just feel like, I'm trying to use the right term and not be derogatory, but, kind of like all I'm good for is an erection. I feel like I'm just an erection and a mule, like my function is just to perform an intimacy, which obviously I was totally on the wrong page there, as we all were, and just bring home the bacon. And I can remember many times, getting picked up at the airport on a Friday night, because I traveled every week for about 10 years, and would go straight in, a car full of kids, and straight to the restaurant. And so, yeah, I think that's a good point. I kind of shifted after both, after the second marriage ended. There was quite a bit of trauma and stuff, and the two youngest were girls, and I got them back. I came off the street, I got them back. We were now living together, and I think they were 11 and 12, and I had them about 3 years. And I made the shift. They helped me make the shift then. That's when Soulogy was started, and or Soulogy One Studios. And it was pretty amazing. But I was in that matrix mode of, oh, you got to do this and you got to do that. And, and it was like fighting nature.
Yeah.
And at the time I had met Morgan, so I was getting some insight into the whole feminine masculine thing. And then one day I just said, I'm going to let them roam free,
Mm.
you know, and by this time they probably would have been, 13, 14, but 13, 14, girls are women at this point,
Mhm.
and they
Yeah.
certainly had the starseed aptitude as well. But just like a force of nature, I just let them run, and my house became a disaster. Uh, it did. It became a disaster because I wasn't going to enable, I wasn't going to
Mhm.
just be their slave. And
Right.
it was like a Mexican standoff, but it was beautiful. It was absolutely
Mhm.
beautiful. I just, it helped me a lot, to be honest with you. It helped me heal a lot. Kids are amazing. They're just
Yeah, they are.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I don't talk to my kids a lot. I don't talk to any of my extended family, like so many of us. But it's all there. One of them doesn't speak to me, but the
Mhm.
other five, we can go
Mhm.
6 months and it's like, hey, what's up, Dad? And it's just like,
Same.
wow, it's there. The love is there. So what more
Yeah.
can you ask
Yeah.
for? They accept you, you
Right.
accept them. And it's so nice not to play that role anymore.
Yeah. You it came up for me this spring when I was moving through that big wave, and it was all this stuff with my son, who was 21, so he's older also, and individuating hugely, right? And it was this archetypal mothering from the matrix archetype of, God, I gotta save my kid. I gotta keep my kid alive. I gotta make sure life is good for my kid. Like, that was such a strong vibe for mothers in that matrix.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta make life good for my kids. Gotta
Yeah.
make it better for my kids. I remember feeling that the moment he was born, oh man, I gotta fix this world, because here comes my
Mm-hmm.
and it was so much release of that. And I'm sure it just like it freed up our shared enmeshed field.
Yeah.
I feel so much that it freed up him. Whatever he did or does is up to him, right? But my end, I just felt so, it just lightened it for both of us so much. And
Yeah.
like what you're talking about with your kid,
Yeah, exactly.
there it is.
Exactly. I mean, so it's so funny because I lived in a townhouse, and you walk through the back patio. That's how you would get there. You park outside, go to the back patio. Front door wasn't used. So every Friday I'd be in the kitchen, 4 o'clock, cooking something up for them, knowing they're going to come in and we're going to have this discussion. Where are you going? What are you going to do this, And so after about a year, because every Friday I would sit them down, and it became this ordeal of this lecture, right? Why aren't
The
you
dad talk.
right? The dad, because I was a single parent, right? So I was like, why
Yeah.
aren't you washing your dishes? Why aren't you cleaning your room? Why is there panties on the floor and stuff that I don't even want to look at in the trash? Why? Why? And it all culminated this one time. Now we had this glass top round wicker table as a kitchen table. And man, I gave the greatest dad speech ever. I was like, and I was pacing back and forth. And you just want to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, with whoever you want to do it.
They're like, yeah.
So I kicked something. I kicked something, and it was like a movie. It was like a slow motion. It flew through the air, and it's going right for the glass table. And it just, I think that was the moment though where I went, oh my God, you asshole, like,
yeah.
and the crazy thing was they both just they just watched it happen, and they just looked at me like, get a hold of yourself, man. And so that was it. It was like, it's like the ego holding on with the white knuckles and fingernails.
Yeah. Okay, let's just pause and ask all the parents listening, how many of you have had a moment like, and we'll be like, hell yes.
Yeah.
We've all had moments. But that tight control.
Yeah.
versus the limitless freedom.
Yeah.
It's like it's like where we're at right now, right?
Yeah, it is.
What are we calling in? And I see it in our media,
Yeah.
I just watched the 3rd season of Sex Education. I just finished it this weekend. I don't know if you've seen that on Netflix.
Haven't seen it.
But the 3rd season's all about this school, and there's this tight control, and then there's this rampant sexual freedom expression going loose. And it's like we're all trying to figure this out. How do we find that middle ground together? We know that control paradigm is not working. Like the kids are not going to stand for it. It feels awful to us adults, right? Like this is no good for anybody. But what is it going to look like on the other side? Okay, so yeah, we're going to live with some chaos for a while.
I mean,
be okay with some of that.
Yeah, I mean,
But it doesn't have to be complete disaster the whole way.
No, I agree. I agree with that.
Mhm.
You know, I cringe a little bit when I hear myself say, or even somebody say, it's going to take a while or it's going to take this long. I know this can flip instantly. No different than kicking the ball into the glass table incident. You know, it can go like that. But it's, you know, like I can see, you know, love is free. You know, the soul is free. And, you know, it's, you know, there's that old saying, you know, if you use the analogy of a bar of soap, do you hold it too tight or too loose? Because either way you can drop it. And to me, it's like flip that whole adage on its head, because you've obviously, I'm going to hold it too tight rather than too loose if the possibilities are the same.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you're not even holding it at all. Like these are souls and they have so much to teach us. And I'm saying this as an example of what you're talking about. It's almost like we're all teenagers and we've hit that moment where we realize our parents can't kill us, right? You know, that moment when a teenager, like 13, oh, wow, I'm going to stay out an extra hour. Like, what are you going to do? You know, like I'm too big to be hit now, you know, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like that. And so how do you learn not to touch the stove? You get burned now and then. And so it's that whole worrying and stress and strife and that constriction that you're talking about and control, that in itself was the energy that we manifested, in my opinion, you know. So now we let go, and that's pretty damn scary, really.
I realized in my experience, this especially showed up with my youngest son, who is like, you know, just doesn't fit any of the boxes or any of the pathways or tracks. He's just one of these new kids who's here to forge it all new. And I, you know, the more I pulled my energy out of wanting anything to happen, the freer I made it for him to show up and contribute.
Yeah. And they can't.
Now it's easy. Like I can make a request and there's no energetic charge to my request. And you know, 9 times out of 10, he's like, sure, I can do that. Unload the dishwasher, sure, you know. But I had to pull all my energy back from expecting anything from him.
Isn't that crazy? It's the unspoken stuff. I remember when I was on the streets and I had a 16-year-old boy, and he was technically living with me, but I didn't have a home. So we'd hook up a couple times a week in a hotel. And every time I'd see him, I'd be like, hey, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be okay. And he looked at me one day and he goes, it's always okay, Dad. Just like Buddha. And I was just like, oh, that stuck with me to this day. Like, it's always okay. That was just like, and that's what I mean. They have like this, well, they're less conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
They're higher frequency, especially the ones coming in now.
Mm-hmm.
And so they haven't been imprinted. And so they have this innate knowledge or wisdom that just, like you said, if you don't hold it down and try to constrict it, it'll come out. And, you know, I honestly think that we're going to get to the point where energetically they'll be leading us.
Yeah, absolutely. My
which I
son,
guess is what happens anyway. Yeah.
he said, he's been exploring with his biological clock, so he'll stay up late. So he got himself flipped onto being awake at night and asleep during the day. And he's just experimenting. Like, that's what these kids are going to do, right? They're going to just try everything on for size and see how it works. But he couldn't play his music at night because there's people in the household sleeping. So whatever, it wasn't, they also can figure out, oh, you know what, if I figured out my own path, it's not going to really jive necessarily with the reality of the world, or even with my own physiology. So, okay, how do I flip myself back? So he tried different things to flip himself back. It took a few days and he finally did it. So the other day I'm like, hey, you're awake before 10. Awesome. That's what you wanted. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I'm like, how did you do it? And he said, I am a god.
Really?
And it was cheek, he was kind of being facetious. It wasn't egoic at all. But I was like, yeah, you are. And so am I.
Many a true word spoken in jest.
Yeah. He often tells me, Mom, I am well aware. And I'm like, oh, right. Yes, you are
Slightly.
well aware.
My littlest one, she'd always tell me, like, even from 13, 12, 13, and of course the littlest one, you're like trying to like totally hold back. But of course she's observed everything of the ones in front of her. So she's already,
she's ready to go.
Right. And she'd always say, I do what I want. But she would say it in the same way. She wouldn't say it to be, antagonistic towards me or disrespectful. But at the same time, she was sending me a message.
Yeah.
She says, I do what I want. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, it's helpful to realize that a lot of these kids, they're really here to bust the status quo. And it's going to start in our families,
Mm-hmm.
Anytime they feel and sense and experience that imprint in the family, that's going to come to us first.
Yeah.
That questioning and pushing back. And
yeah. My two littlest ones are that. So they're now 20 and 19. And both of them had been on their own, independent, paying their bills since before they were 18, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. And to your point earlier about like that whole matrix dad and all that, I remember having a conversation. So they'd have been like 13, 14 or 14, 15. And I said, look, man, I'm tired of fighting you. I'm going to make suggestions. You're both adult women now. Okay. And you can't have your cake and eat it too. So don't come running to daddy. I'm going to treat you like an adult. All right. And now there was give and take a little bit, that you would naturally have in an evolution like that. But I think that that's part of it. I'm not saying that was my deal. It wasn't. It was their deal. But I think that allowance created, but to your point too, they're looked at a little bit differently by the others because they're so out of the norm. Right. That's just not normal for, a 16-year-old to go on her own in the year 2000s, right? Or a high school graduate to get her own apartment at 18 years old, right? Without having the aptitude to be able to go get a scholarship. And just, I'm not going to go that route. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be a movie director and write movie scripts. And in the process, so she works in an art gallery in a high-end restaurant. And she has a rabbit and she has a hairless cat and a dog.
Wow. Wow. It sounds like you stepping back to give that space just gave them that opportunity to step into being that responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's so supportive because there's obviously a level of trust on your part that they no doubt could feel in your field.
Or surrender.
Surrender. And then, you build trust off of that as you go.
Well, the interesting thing too with them is they don't try to lean on me. Again, there was a little give and take, like, hey, can you send me? No, I can't. I don't have any money. But it's interesting because they will call me and they'll just want to talk about, I don't want to say their problems, but they'll want to talk about things going on in their life, and just want to talk to their dad, their friend about it. You know, like,
Yeah.
what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And, you know, I'm usually like, well, if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you. But
that's a
yeah.
good way to go with the older kids. You know, it's like, need a listener right now, or do you also want some feedback, you know,
Yeah.
and ask them to clarify? Because a lot of times the parental impulse is to jump in.
Yeah. I don't
Like,
do that.
oh, how about,
Yeah. Not anymore. I'm not saying I was perfect. It's just evolved nicely.
yeah.
But I got to believe that says a lot for the collective as well. Just, you know, being represented in say my little family or whatever, my relationship with these kids. But yeah, it's amazing. I don't see how the force of these young people will be held back. I mean, it's already this feminine energy that's become such a force this year, you know, this silent majority, you know, because I don't think it's a minority. I mean, you're seeing it more and more every day. The mama bear energy, but now with these kids coming behind it, whatever, the matrix, the 1%, that they don't have a chance. You know, they don't have a
It's
chance.
happening. It's happening.
Right on. This was cool. It was a good way to end the day. I really appreciate
Todd.
you. I appreciate you coming on, and I really wish you the best. You and your family, all blessings to you. And thanks for sharing yourself with us. And maybe we can do it again next year and see what's going on with you.
I'd love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Big love to everybody.
Okay, you take care. See y'all tomorrow. Thank you.
Right.